After centuries of neglect, stones fall, memory fades, and power diminishes. The truth slips from our fingers. Once, brave men trembled to approach the mounds of Cruachan. Even the mightiest were in awe of this place where worlds meet and mingle, where our world meets the other world. Now children play on the mounds and eat their sweets and sandwiches without so much as a thought or a care in the world. Careless you may be, but there are still spirits in this place. Voices more quiet now, but they speak to those who listen. Sometimes they come like gentle whispers in the wind, music half heard, wraiths half seen in mist. At other times, a vivid horror of nameless atrocity seizes the mind, freezes the heart. All nature startles. Birds stare with beady eyes as though possessed. Screeching beasts make every hair on the body stand on end. It is as though the very gates of hell have opened, and well it might seem so, for dark things fly out of Onagat, the cave of the cats. When the Christians came here, they called it the mouth of hell. But to pagans, it is a sacred place, a door to the other world. It is a testing place, a frightful place to be sure, but not just a place of devils and the damned, for good and evil mix there, as they do in this world. The dead do indeed live there, with the Tuatha Daman, with the old gods, the good god Dagda and his son Angus, god of love and poetry, and Manannán mac Lir, the god of the sea, to name but a few. Fairy people live there, not little things with wings, but full-size beings whose magic powers can steal a life or give it back in a moment, at a whim. The terrible Morrigan, the shape-shifting goddess, flew out of the cave in the form of the scald crow. Before the time of the Táin Bó Cúailnge, she appeared to Cuchulainn as a noble figure in a red cloak, but he did not recognize her and insulted her authority. The Morrigan swore then to hinder him at the height of his struggle in the form of an eel around his feet in the ford, as a grey wolf to stampede the beasts against him, and a hornless heifer to lead the cattle herd to trample him. All of these she did as he struggled to defend Ulster in single combat. But that's another story. On the slope below the cave, two mighty furrows scored the ground. The largest, some 300 paces long, 6 arm spans wide, and flanked by banks the height of a man and more. A great boar ripped these out of the ground with its tusks. From time to time, 3 of these monstrous pigs would burst out of the cave to lay waste to all around them, rendering the ground they touched infertile for generations. Such was the power of the cave that a ring was built around the entrance to contain it. Its power is now diminished by neglect. How else could men with shovels have built a little lane across it? They destroyed the ring, reducing the entrance to a little hole in a ditch, and got away with it. In its day, they would have died for less. Just inside is a lintel stone inscribed in Ogham writing, Freach, son of Maeve. Freach was a great warrior. In the Táin, when Cuchulainn first held up the armies of Maeve in single combat, she sent Freach to fight him in the ford. Cuchulainn held Freach in high esteem and fought him unwillingly, but defeated him and held him under the water. Lifting him out of the water, Cuchulainn asked him to surrender with his life, but Freach refused, so he pushed him back under until he drowned. When the body was brought to the bank, a troop of women from the other world appeared around him and carried him away to the She in the nearby hill, which is called She Freach. Of all the lingering spirits here, the greatest is the warrior queen herself. As daylight fades to night, I sense Maeve's spirit at the great mound of Rathcrone. Her powers were almost godlike. At times she seemed to preside over both worlds, this and the She, the other world, beneath. When guests approached Maeve's court, the people of the She would appear to them as they approached and dress them in fitting splendor to be received by such a great queen. She was not above a touch of jealousy herself, or was it just pride and insistence on a marriage of equals? When Ailill boasted that she was lucky to have such a wealthy man as he for a husband, she insisted that her wealth was equal in every way. And so it was, in every way, except for a bull that Ailill owned, finer than anything she possessed. She tried to borrow Dom Cuilne, the brown bull of Cooley, for a year to equal the score, but when she was refused, she launched the great cattle raid, sacrificing the lives of thousands for a point of honor. In the final routing of her armies, when the Ulstermen arose from their pangs, she narrowly escaped death herself. Cuchulainn surprised her at the rear of her army as she relieved herself at her time of bleeding. As she squatted defenseless before him, he told her he was no killer of women and walked away. The day after the great battle, Maeve smuggled out the great bull of Cooley, Dom Cuilne, and sent it back here to Cruachan. At a fort still known as Ran na Darv, the Fort of the Bulls, Dom Cuilne met Ailill's bull, Finnbennach. On stormy nights, you could still hear the roaring of the two great bulls as they battled into the night. In the morning, the men of Connacht saw Dom Cuilne depart with the mangled remains of Finnbennach on his horns, heading back to his own place to die, dropping pieces of his foe as he passed. Maeve's death, when it came, was violent, as is fitting for a warrior queen, but it did not come in the heat of battle as one might expect. Cuchulainn may have balked at killing women, but Maeve herself had no such scruples. Her sister, Clothru, was queen here before her, and Maeve had her slaughtered at an island on Loch Ree, the island known as Inishclothran, after Clothru. Now Clothru was pregnant at the time, with a son of Conor MacNessa. At her killing, the child was cut out of her belly with a sword, and his name was Furby. When Maeve became queen, it was a daily ritual for her to wash at a certain well on Inishclothran when she was near. Young Furby heard of this observance and swore to avenge the death of his mother. He went to the island and placed a post as tall as Maeve on the stone by the well, and stretched a rope from it to the shore of the lake. Taking the rope back to Ulster, he set it between two stakes. There he practiced constantly with his sling until he could cast a stone from one stake and strike an apple placed on the top of the other. It came to pass that a great assembly was called for the men of Connacht and the men of Ulster to meet on the shores of Loch Ree. Maeve happened to be bathing on the island that day, admired by the men watching her from the shore. "Who is that woman?" Furby asked. They told him it was his mother's sister. Furby was eating a bit of cheese at the time. He didn't wait to pick up a stone, but put the cheese in his sling and fired at Maeve as she turned towards him. The cheese struck her on the temple, killing her outright. How are the mighty fallen? A great queen killed by a bit of hard cheese.
Лучше бы эффект. Да.